If you vote for Kamala Harris or if you vote for Donald Trump, you're voting for genocide. At this point, that is irrefutable. If you look at what Donald Trump has said and done during his term.
The United States recognizes Israel's absolute right to defend itself. We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
President Trump, thank you for today's historic decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital.
I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal.
Israel thanks President Trump for his commitment to confront the terrorist regime in Tehran.
In a moment, I will sign a presidential proclamation recognizing Israel's sovereign right over the Golan Heights.
President Trump has just made history. I called him. I thanked him on behalf of the people of Israel. He did it again. Israel has never had a better friend than you. Thank you for all you have done to make the alliance between America and Israel stronger and greater than ever.
And if you look at what Kamala Harris has said and what she's done with Biden, it is, after all, the Biden-Harris administration.
The vice president says she has spoken with President Isaac Herzog of Israel and joined President Biden on calls with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Vice President Harris told us the U.S. is providing advice, equipment, and diplomatic support.
Israel, without any question, has a right to defend itself.
The Pentagon has also deployed 2 imposing aircraft carrier strike groups to the region.
I thank President Biden. He dispatched 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East.
Israel has a right to defend itself.
I want to thank President Joe Biden for offering to help replenish our stocks of missile interceptors.
We will ensure Israel has what it needs to defend itself against these terrorists. That's a guarantee.
President Joe Biden told us, Kamala is my partner in all of it.
Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel has a right to defend itself. I will start this conversation by saying, and Israel has a right to defend itself. Which is why I support the United States' commitment to provide Israel with $38 billion in military assistance over the next decade. I am fully committing to maintaining Israel's qualitative military edge. I've had an unwavering commitment to the existence of the State of Israel.
If you think the Harris administration is going to change the playbook one iota from the Biden administration, you're fooling yourself.
Would you do anything differently? For example, would you withhold some U.S. weapons shipments to Israel? That's what a lot of people on the progressive left want you to do.
Let me be very clear. I am unwavering in my commitment to Israel's defense. Let's get the hostages out. Let's get the ceasefire done.
But no change in policy in terms of arms.
No, we have to get a deal done. Dana, we have to get a deal done. When you look at...
If you vote for either of these two, you're voting for AIPAC, you're voting for American imperialism, Zionist colonialism, ever-increasing militarism.
I will ensure America always has the strongest, most lethal fighting force in the world.
We have to have, by far, the strongest military in the world.
War and all that war entails. Starvation, famine, rape, murder, displacement, disease. And because this particular war is being waged by a racist apartheid pariah state, the Geneva Conventions and international law are being shirked and unprecedented numbers of innocents are being killed, including humanitarian aid workers and journalists. Israel is evidently more interested in wiping out a civilian population than it is in fighting its asymmetrically minuscule enemy, Hamas, a resistance movement that some people prefer to call a brutal terrorist organization.
Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization.
Well, if you look at the way they treated their hostages in these last 11 months, how they were returned to their families, and what good condition and good spirits they were returned to their families, and then you look at the way Israel treated their hostages and how those people returned, if they returned, you can't say Hamas is a brutal terrorist organization without acknowledging that Israel is 100 times worse.
Let's take a step back. October 7th. So let's start with October 7th.
Did Hamas kill people on October 7th? Sure they did. Did they behead 40 babies? That was Israeli disinformation.
I'm talking to some of the soldiers and they say what they've witnessed. Babies, their heads cut off. That's what they said.
They are aggressive. They are very bad. They cut head of children, cut head of women.
We have some really disturbing new information out of Israel. The Israeli Prime Minister's spokesman just confirmed babies and toddlers were found with their heads decapitated.
Now confirmed directly from the Israeli Prime Minister's office.
Can I take that as confirmation then?
Babies, I can tell you that they, some of them, yeah, heads were cut off. This is what we're hearing from from soldiers on the ground, and yes, they cut off heads.
It's been verified firsthand by a senior official in our coronary service, a senior person who testified to the fact that he indeed saw the heads of severed babies. I, of course, haven't seen the atrocity myself.
I never really thought that I would see and have confirmed pictures of terrorists beheading children. I never thought I'd ever, anyway.
The White House retracted the statement, telling media Biden and other U.S. officials have not seen pictures or confirmed such reports independently.
Did they employ systematic rape during their October 7th raid?
Women were raped. Women were horribly raped, horrendously so.
That has also been debunked.
The New York Times article at the center of the controversy was published December 28th, not long after the highly publicized article was published. Major discrepancies began to emerge. One of the three authors, named Anat Schwartz, had liked multiple posts on social media advocating for violence against Palestinians, including one that called for turning Gaza into a slaughterhouse.
And I worked with two other colleagues, and we interviewed almost 200 people over the course of 2 months. And what we found, I don't want to even use the word evidence, because evidence is almost like a legal term.
The people that the New York Times relied on to assert that there was a systematic, intentional campaign of rape weaponized by Hamas were people that have no forensic credentials.
This is the body with the nails and the parts.
Oh my God.
אין שתי אופציות של מה שהם עשו. This is a piece of metal. סכין, ותקעו מלמטה, שכו החוצה.
Oh my God.
Israeli police say they now have evidence that a coordinated campaign of rape and desecration by the commandos took place.
Hamas terrorists actually raped, gang raped. This is a fact, a horrific, horrible fact.
Israeli women who were raped and left for dead, then killed with rounds of gunfire, according to the Israelis, murdered twice.
Bloodthirsty Hamas terrorists committed shocking acts of sexual violence.
Hamas has denied the accusations.
Do we believe the Hamas spokesperson who said that rape is forbidden, therefore it couldn't have possibly happened on October 7th? Or do we believe the women whose bodies tell us how they spent the last minutes of their lives?
They reported at the time that Israel had enormous amounts of forensic evidence that they were going through that would establish all of the claims that they were making. On December 8th or 9th, they very quietly corrected that story.
The UN, this investigative body, they actually tried to conduct an investigation and went to Israeli authorities and said, show us the evidence for mass rape. We want to document this. And they were called anti-Semitic.
The UN stressed Israel has blocked such a probe by the organization's Human Rights Office.
I believe the report actually calls on the Israelis to allow that investigation also.
And the Israelis said no.
All right, well, there you go.
Now, I don't know if rape happened or not. The problem is when you say it's systematic mass rape and you repeat that over and over again.
Again and again, a systematic method of sexual assault, of gender violence.
This was part of their orders, was to rape and torture as many people as they could.
Sadistic abuse and sexual assault.
It seemed like there was a systematic genital mutilation of women.
I mean, the things you're describing, totally horrific. You've said you're not a forensics expert.
We are not forensics experts. The purpose of our unit was actually more a Jewish religious role.
The UN report says, quote, in the medico-legal assessment of available photos and videos, no tangible indications of rape could be identified.
At the end of the day, they weren't able to really glean much other than what the Israeli authorities were telling them about what happened on that day.
A member of a group from Kibbutz Be'eri that looked into the sexual assault claims told the Times, and I quote, the story is false.
And since then, in fact, the only sexual violence we've heard about is coming from the IDF in their treatment of Palestinian detainees.
بحط لك اياها جوا بخلي مخك يطلع
להכניס מקל לרקטום של בן אדם זה לגיטימי?
כן, אם הוא נוח'בה הכל לגיטימי לעשות לו. הכל. הכל.
And furthermore, much of the destruction and death of that day has now been attributed to the IDF because the forensic analysis showed that a lot of the destruction was done by air, i.e. Israeli Apache helicopters, and artillery fire. And we know that the IDF employed what they call the Hannibal Directive, which is to shoot your own people so that they don't become hostages from the enemy, which is brutal. Netanyahu likes to say, this is not a clash of civilizations.
It's a clash between barbarism and civilization.
Seriously, who's barbaric here? Who's spraying sewage on other people's homes? Who's indiscriminately dropping 2,000-pound bombs on residential neighborhoods of civilian men, women, and children? Who's shooting children in the head?
Maybe I killed a girl, she was 12, but I'm looking for a baby.
Who's actually using civilians as human shields? Who's cutting off drinking water to millions of people, allowing them to starve and wither and suffer and die from preventable diseases? But neither the DNC nor the first presidential debate acknowledged any of these truths. The duopoly, as an apparatus, was entirely dismissive of the atrocities committed by Israel, of our complicity in those atrocities, dismissive certainly of any need to stem the flow of arms to Israel. That is off the table. It will not be said. The most they can bring themselves to say at this point is ceasefire. Remember, they couldn't even say that.
When we talk about a ceasefire, when you use that term, when that term is applied, it connotes a cessation of hostilities for an indefinite period with the purpose of finding an end to the conflict. And we don't support that at this time.
We need to see we need to see a humanitarian pause so we can flow. We need to see ceasing of.
Some of your fellow progressives say that there should be a full-on ceasefire.
Well, I don't know how you can have a ceasefire, permanent ceasefire, with an organization like Hamas.
Egypt, Jordan, Qatar, and Morocco all agree a ceasefire is best, while Canada, the U.S., Britain, and the European Union are instead proposing what they call a humanitarian pause.
Then finally they realize we can say that. You know why? Because it's not gonna fucking happen anyway.
Now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. And the president and I are working around the clock every day to get that ceasefire deal done. We have been working around the clock.
We're working around the clock.
Working around the clock.
We're working around the clock.
So we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock.
Ceasefire requires, well, diplomacy and discussions and revisions and preparations, aka stalling.
We're going to keep at it till we get it done, but we've got a way to go.
An arms embargo could be done today. Biden himself, by executive order, do an arms embargo.
And so we're going to continue to do that, continue to have those diplomatic conversations. We continue to work on a ceasefire deal. We believe that is the way forward in calming and lowering the temperature there, and that's why we've been working around the clock.
A vote for either Trump or Kamala Harris is a vote to continue the course that we are on. And the course that we are on is dangerously immoral. So me personally, I'm voting for Jill Stein. She is consistent with her message. She's anti-war, she's anti-genocide, certainly. She's also Medicare for all, and a whole host of other good things that we fucking desperately need.
The U.S. is fundamentally responsible here because the U.S. has enabled all of this. We provide the weapons, we provide the military funding, we provide the diplomatic cover, we provide intelligence. It's time to withdraw to the 1967 borders, as the most recent of two ICJ resolutions basically stated. So all we have to do is withhold the weapons, which, by the way, are illegal anyhow. Under U.S. law, we cannot be providing military assistance to countries that are violating humanitarian law, that are interfering with the delivery of humanitarian aid, and which are violating nuclear weapons treaties. And Israel counts on all three scores. So that assistance is illegal to start with, just in terms of U.S. law. So it's not hard for us to fix this. We have the power to fix this in the blink of an eye.
If you followed Bernie in 2016, 2020, Jill Stein is the option this year. They're not going to win, but all they need is 5% of the national vote in order to qualify for federal funding in 2028, which will give that party finally a huge chip to play on the national stage in national politics. Finally, perhaps we could break the duopoly, the Democrats and Republicans, and break the stranglehold that militarism has in our fucking society, if we can get the Green Party to that point. 5%. So, Jill Stein, 2024, it beats voting for genocide.
I will do everything in my power to ensure broad and bipartisan support for Israel's security and right to self-defense. America's support for Israel's security must be rock solid. We must stand with Israel. We must stand with Israel. We must stand with Israel. So that's who we are.